Have you ever wondered what happens to canine officers when they retire? This heartwarming story shows the incredible bond that continues even after years of service. The first light was a whisper, a pale, gray line beneath the bedroom curtains. It didn't wake Jake Callahan. The wet nose did. It nudged his hand, a cold, damp punctuation mark in the quiet room. He felt a familiar weight shift on the edge of the bed. A low whine followed, a sound more of gentle reminder than impatient demand. Jake's eyes opened. He didn't need to see. He knew the shape in the darkness. The pointed ears, the intelligent eyes watching him. "All right, big guy," Jake mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "I'm up." A tail thumped against the bed frame. Thump, thump, thump. A steady, happy rhythm. This was Thor. Not just a dog. Never just a dog. He was Jake's partner. His shadow. His other half. For 10 years on the K9 unit, they had been a single entity. Callahan and Thor. Now, in the quiet peace of retirement, they still were. Jake swung his legs out of bed. His knees cracked a protest. Age was a thief, stealing little bits of you each day. Thor stretched, a long, elegant bow, his powerful shoulders rippling under his black and tan coat. He was old, too. A touch of gray dusted his muzzle, a slight stiffness in his back legs on cold mornings. They were two old soldiers, enjoying their peace. Their morning routine was a silent dance. Jake moved to the kitchen. Thor padded behind him, his claws making soft clicking sounds on the hardwood floor. Jake filled the coffee maker. He measured the grounds. Thor sat patiently by his food bowl. His discipline was ingrained. He would not eat until given the command. A lifetime of training did not fade with a pension. "Okay, pal," Jake said, placing the bowl on the floor. Thor looked up, his amber eyes seeking Jake's. He waited. It was a small thing, a moment of connection, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. "Eat up," Jake said softly. Thor lowered his head and began to eat. Jake watched him, a small smile on his face. He remembered the first day he met Thor, a bundle of clumsy paws and boundless energy, a puppy with the heart of a lion. He saw the potential then, the intelligence, the courage. He had fought to have him as his partner. It was the best decision he ever made. After breakfast, it was time for play, or as Jake called it, maintaining operational readiness. He grabbed Thor's favorite toy, a worn-out length of fire hose. Thor's eyes lit up. The old warrior vanished. The playful pup returned. They went in the backyard. The grass was wet with dew. The air was cool and clean. "Ready?" Jake asked, holding the hose. Thor crouched, his body coiled like a spring. His tail gave a single, excited wag. Jake faked a throw to the left. Thor didn't flinch. He watched Jake's hand, not the toy. He was always watching the handler. Jake grinned. "Still got it, old man." He threw the hose. It sailed across the yard. Thor exploded into motion. He was a blur of fur and muscle. A beautiful, powerful machine doing what he loved. He snatched the hose from the air and trotted back, head held high, a champion returning with his prize. They played for 20 minutes. It was a game, but it was also a ritual. It was a reaffirmation of their connection, a reminder of the thousands of hours they had spent training. Every command, every signal, every piece of praise. It was the language they shared, a language of trust and loyalty that went deeper than words. Jake sat on the back steps, catching his breath. Thor dropped the hose and rested his heavy head on Jake's knee. Jake stroked the dog's ears, his fingers tracing the faint line of a scar near his left eye. A memory flickered. A warehouse. The smell of rot and chemicals. A suspect with a knife. A flash of movement. Thor's fierce loyalty had saved him that day, and many others. "You're a good boy," Jake whispered. "The best." Thor looked up at him, his eyes filled with a quiet, unwavering devotion. He didn't need words. He understood. He had always understood. This was their life now. A quiet rhythm of waking, eating, and playing. It was a world away from the sirens and the danger. But the bond, the core of their partnership, was stronger than ever. It was forged in fire, and now it was tempered in peace. He wasn't just a pet. He was a piece of Jake's own soul, walking beside him in the quiet morning light. Later that morning, the leash clicked onto Thor's collar. It was the sound of adventure. They left the quiet cul-de-sac and walked towards the woods. A path snaked through the tall pines, a trail they had walked 1,000 times. The air smelled of damp earth and pine needles. For Jake, It was a path paved with memories. With every step, the quiet present seemed to fade. The ghosts of their past walked with them. Jake's hand rested on Thor's back. The fur was thick and warm. He could almost feel the phantom weight of the tactical vest Thor used to wear. The vest with the word K9 emblazoned in bold, white letters. He remembered a rainy Tuesday. A call came in, a drug shipment, a warehouse down by the docks. The air was thick with the stench of fish and diesel. Rain slicked the pavement. The team assembled. A dozen officers, tense and focused. But Jake's focus was singular. It was on the dog at his side. Thor was perfectly still. His body was a statue of coiled energy. He could feel the tension humming through the leash. He knew. He always knew when the work was real. Flashback. The warehouse door splintered. Shouts echoed in the cavernous space. Police. Get down. Men scattered like rats. The air was a chaotic storm of sound and movement. Jake held Thor back for a moment. He surveyed the scene. Crates were stacked high. A forklift sat abandoned. The smell of marijuana was heavy, but there was something else. A sharp, chemical tang. Meth. Jake gave Thor the signal. A single, sharp command. Seek. Thor shot forward. He wasn't a pet. He was a weapon. A specialized tool honed by years of training. He ignored the fleeing men. He ignored the shouting. He had a job. His nose was to the ground, then in the air. He moved with a predatory grace. He weaved through the maze of crates. Jake followed, his own weapon drawn, his eyes scanning every shadow. He trusted Thor completely. His life was in his partner's paws. Thor stopped at a stack of crates marked machine parts. He sat. It was his signal, a quiet, definitive statement. Jake motioned to the team. 2 officers approached with a crowbar. The wood splintered. Inside, hidden beneath a layer of greasy rags, were dozens of vacuum-sealed bags filled with crystalline powder. A multi-million-dollar bust. Thor looked back at Jake, his tail giving a slight, proud wag. Jake knelt and gave him the reward. A quick, rough praise. Good boy, Thor. In the middle of the chaos, it was their private moment of victory. Jake blinked, the memory receding. He was back on the forest path. A squirrel chattered angrily from a branch above. Thor's ear twitched, but he paid it no mind. He was focused on the walk, on Jake. Jake's hand tightened on the leash. His heart ached with a profound sense of gratitude. The dog had made him a better cop, a better man. They walked further. The sun dappled through the canopy. It reminded him of another day, a summer day, hot and humid. The call was different, more desperate. A 4-year-old girl wandered away from a family picnic. The woods were vast. The parents were frantic, their faces etched with a terror Jake knew all too well. Hope was fading with the daylight. Flashback. The search area was huge. Volunteers and officers combed the woods, their shouts sounding small and lost. The air was thick with the buzz of insects. Jake knelt down. He held a small, pink sweater to Thor's nose. The little girl's scent. Find, Jake commanded, his voice low and urgent. Thor took the scent. His demeanor changed. This wasn't a hunt for drugs or a suspect. It was something more primal, a search for the lost. He moved differently, slower, more methodical. His nose worked the ground, the bushes, the air. He led Jake away from the main search party, deeper into the dense undergrowth. Hours passed. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Doubt began to creep into Jake's mind. The woods were too big. The girl was too small. Then Thor stopped. He lifted his head and let out a single, soft whine. Not a bark, not a growl. It was a sound of discovery. He moved forward cautiously. Jake followed, his heart pounding. And there she was, curled up at the base of a giant oak tree, asleep. She was crying softly in her sleep. Thor didn't rush in. He lay down a few feet away, a silent, furry guardian. He nudged her gently with his nose. The little girl's eyes fluttered open. She saw the big dog, and her eyes went wide with fear. But Thor just whined again, a soft, gentle sound. Jake stepped into the clearing. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said, his voice choked with relief. "He's a good boy. He found you." The little girl, seeing Jake's uniform, reached out a tiny hand and touched Thor's nose. Thor licked her hand. The crisis was over. A tear welled in Jake's eye. He quickly wiped it away. He looked down at Thor, now trotting contentedly beside him. The hero who saved the little girl's life was now just enjoying the smells of the forest. The juxtaposition was staggering. The bravery, the loyalty, it was all still there, beneath the surface. He was a guardian who had earned his rest. But there was one memory that always sat heaviest in his heart. The one that cemented their bond in blood and sacrifice. A traffic stop gone wrong. A cold night. Flashing blue and red lights, painting the darkness. A man with a violent record and nothing to lose. Flashback. The driver was agitated. His hands were shaking. Jake saw it in his eyes. The desperation. The fear. His partner, a young officer named Miller, was on the passenger side. Jake kept his hand near his weapon. "Sir, please step out of the vehicle." The man didn't move. He just stared at Jake. Thor was in the back of the patrol car, silent but alert. He could sense Jake's rising heart rate. He knew the signs. Suddenly, the man moved. It was a blur, a glint of metal. A gun. Gun! Jake yelled. He drew his weapon, but the man was fast. The first shot was deafening. It slammed into the car door next to Jake's head. Jake dived for cover. Miller was exposed. The man turned his weapon towards him. There was no time. No time for a clean shot. No time for anything. "Halt!" Jake screamed the command. It was a single word, imbued with all his fear and desperation. He hit the button on his belt. The back door of the patrol car popped open. A black and tan missile launched into the night. Thor crossed the distance in a heartbeat. He didn't hesitate. He didn't flinch at the sound of the gun. He leapt. His body collided with the gunman's arm, just as he fired again. The shot went wild into the night sky. The man screamed as Thor's jaws closed on his arm. The gun clattered to the pavement. It was over in seconds. Miller was safe. The suspect was neutralized. But Thor was hurt. The man had managed to get a blow in with the butt of the gun. A deep gash above Thor's eye. Blood matted his fur. Jake ran to him. He ignored the suspect, now being cuffed on the ground. He knelt by his partner. "Thor, hey buddy." Thor looked up at him, panting, his tail giving a weak thump on the asphalt. Even in pain, he was looking for Jake's approval. He had done his job. He had saved a life. He had saved Jake's family from a folded flag. Back on the path, Jake stopped. He knelt down in the dirt and wrapped his arms around Thor's neck. He buried his face in his partner's fur. The dog leaned into him, a solid, reassuring weight. "You saved me, you know that?" Jake whispered. "You saved all of us." Thor licked his face. A wet, sloppy kiss. He didn't know the words. He didn't need to. The unbreakable bond between them was a living thing. A legacy of shared danger and unwavering trust. They finished their walk in comfortable silence. Two old partners enjoying the peace they had fought so hard to secure. The afternoon sun was warm and lazy. It spilled across the wooden porch, bathing everything in a golden light. This was Thor's favorite time of day. The action and memories of the morning gave way to the simple, profound joy of retirement. There were no sirens here, no danger, only peace. Thor lay sprawled on a soft outdoor rug, his legs twitching as he dreamed. He was probably chasing rabbits in a field of endless green. Or perhaps he was dreaming of the past, of heroic deeds and shared victories. Jake sat in a rocking chair nearby, a book resting unread in his lap. He preferred to watch Thor, to watch him be a dog. The screen door creaked open. Sarah, Jake's wife, came out carrying a tray with 2 glasses of iced tea and a bowl of water. She set the water bowl down near Thor. He stirred, his eyes opening. He gave a soft woof of thanks and lapped at the cool water. "How are my 2 favorite retirees?" Sarah asked, handing Jake a glass. She ran her hand over Thor's head. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing in contentment. "We're holding down the fort," Jake said with a smile. "It's hard work, but someone's got to do it." Sarah laughed. She had been there for all of it. The late-night call-outs, the worry, the pride. She understood the bond between Jake and Thor better than anyone. She had seen how they relied on each other, how they were 2 halves of a whole. She had welcomed Thor into their home, not as a police dog, but as a family member from the very first day. The back door creaked open again. This time, it was their 6-year-old daughter, Lily. She had a fistful of dandelions. She approached Thor with the cautious reverence a child reserves for something truly special. "Can I give Thor's flowers?" she asked. "Of course, sweetie," Sarah said. Lily knelt beside the big dog. Thor, who could take down an armed man, became the gentlest creature on earth in her presence. He watched as she carefully placed the yellow dandelions one by one on his back. She hummed a little song as she worked. "You're a pretty flower king now, Thor," she declared. Thor let out a happy sigh, as if agreeing with his new royal status. He rested his head on his paws and allowed the little girl to continue her decorations. Jake watched, his heart swelling. This was the reward. This was the life Thor had earned. He was no longer just Jake's partner. He was Lily's gentle giant, Sarah's furry shadow in the garden. He was the heart of their home. Later, the dandelions were brushed off and the iced tea was finished. Jake picked up the worn fire hose toy. Thor's eyes snapped open. The Flower King was gone. The athlete was back. "One more game?" Jake asked. Thor was on his feet in an instant, his body trembling with anticipation. They moved to the lawn. Jake threw the hose. Thor launched himself after it. A picture of pure, unadulterated joy. He sprinted, he leaped, he skidded to a halt. He brought the toy back, his tail wagging furiously. They weren't training for a bust or a chase. They were simply playing, celebrating the freedom to run and leap just for the fun of it. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the yard, Jake sat on the grass. Thor came and lay beside him, resting his head in Jake's lap. The fire hose lay forgotten nearby. Jake stroked Thor's fur, his fingers finding the familiar contours of muscle and bone. He felt the steady, slow rhythm of his partner's breathing. In these quiet moments, the depth of their connection was most apparent. It wasn't about commands and rewards anymore. It was about shared presence, mutual respect, an unspoken love that had grown over a decade of shared life. Jake had seen men break under pressure. He had seen fear in the eyes of the toughest criminals. But he had never seen fear in Thor's eyes when they were together. Only focus and trust, an absolute, unwavering trust that Jake had tried every day to be worthy of. That night, as the house settled into a comfortable silence, Thor took up his usual position at the foot of Jake and Sarah's bed. He was a silent sentinel, a guardian watching over his family. Jake reached down and rested his hand on Thor's back. He felt the gentle rise and fall of his chest. "Good night, partner," Jake whispered into the darkness. A soft thump of a tail on the floor was his reply. He had traded a siren for silence, a badge for a backyard. He had traded the adrenaline of the chase for the quiet joy of a game of fetch. And looking at the hero sleeping at his feet, Jake knew he had never been richer. The bond wasn't broken by retirement. It had simply been given the space to breathe, to deepen, to become something even more profound. It was a bond forged not of service, but of love. An unbreakable, unconditional love. The weekend brought the familiar, happy chaos of family. Jake's son, Michael, came to visit with his wife and their toddler, Sam. The house filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. In the middle of it all was Thor, a calm island in a sea of activity. Sam, who was just learning to walk, toddled over to where Thor was lying on the living room rug. He plopped down with a soft thud and grabbed a handful of Thor's ear. Thor didn't even flinch. He opened one eye, looked at the small child, and then let out a gentle sigh, as if to say, "This is my life now, and it is good." Jake watched from his armchair, a cup of coffee in his hands. He saw how Michael, his grown son, knelt down to scratch Thor behind the ears, his voice soft. "Hey there, old hero. How you doing, boy?" This was Thor's legacy. It wasn't just in the newspaper clippings from old drug busts, or in the commendations tucked away in a box in the attic. It was here, in this house, in the way his family loved and respected this animal. He was a living, breathing testament to a life of service. He had protected strangers in the dark, and now he was reaping the reward by being a cherished member of a loving family. Later, Jake sat on the porch, watching Thor doze in the sun. He reflected on the immense impact the dog had on his own life. Before Thor, Jake had been a good cop, dedicated, efficient, but he was also becoming hard. The things he saw, the darkness he faced, had started to build a wall around his heart. Thor had broken through that wall. Working with him required a different kind of strength. It required patience, empathy, and a deep, nonverbal communication. He had to learn to trust an animal's instincts more than his own eyes sometimes. Thor taught him about loyalty in its purest form. A loyalty not given for a paycheck or a promotion, but out of a deep, instinctual bond. He taught Jake about courage, the kind of courage that makes you run towards danger, not for glory, but to protect the one you love. Jake thought about the community. The people of their city didn't know Thor by name. They knew him only as the canine, the shadow that rode in the back of the police cruiser. But his service had left an indelible mark. The drugs he found would never poison child. The little girl he located was now probably in middle school. Her parents' worst nightmare, just a fading memory. The armed man he stopped never got the chance to create another victim, another grieving family. Thor's work was mostly invisible to the public, a quiet, thankless job performed in the shadows. But its effects rippled outwards, making the community safer in ways no one would ever fully appreciate. He was a silent hero, one of many like him across the country. Jake's thoughts drifted to those other K9s, the young, powerful dogs still on the streets, working their shifts. And the older ones, like Thor, whose bodies were beginning to fail them. The years of jumping, running, and sometimes fighting took a toll. Veterinary bills for retired K9s could be astronomical. Many departments couldn't afford to cover them after the dog was no longer in service. He had heard the stories. Old heroes left with crippling arthritis, their handlers unable to afford the expensive medications. He thought of the organizations he and Sarah now donated to, small nonprofits dedicated to a single, noble cause, providing financial support for the medical needs of retired police and military dogs. They ensured that these heroes could live out their golden years in comfort and dignity, free from pain. They gave them the retirement they so richly deserved. It was the least society could do. These dogs gave everything: their youth, their strength, their unwavering courage. They asked for so little in return: a warm bed, a good meal, the love of their partner. A movement from the lawn caught his eye. Lily was sitting in the grass, reading a picture book out loud to Thor. Thor, who had been dozing, had lifted his head and was watching her intently, as if soaking in every word. This, Jake thought, was everything. This peace, this love, this was the legacy of service, paid in full. It was a legacy not just of crimes solved, but of lives touched. A legacy that now lived on in the simple, beautiful moments of a quiet life. Thor had served his community. Now, it was his family's turn to serve him, to ensure his final years were as full of love and comfort as his service years were full of bravery. As twilight settled, painting the sky in soft hues of lavender and rose, a quiet peace descended upon the house. The family had gone, leaving behind the pleasant echoes of their laughter. The day was drawing to a close. Jake and Thor were back in their familiar spots on the porch. Jake in his rocking chair, Thor lying at his feet. The bond between them felt almost tangible in the calm, evening air. It was a testament to one of the world's most powerful partnerships, the one between a human and an animal. It's a partnership built on a foundation that transcends language. It's built on trust, mutual respect, and a love that asks for nothing but loyalty in return. Thor had been more than a tool or a pet. He was a partner in the truest sense of the word. They had faced the worst of humanity together. In the darkest moments, a look from Thor, a nudge of his head, was all the reassurance Jake needed. It was a silent promise. I am here. We are together. We will face this. That promise didn't end with retirement. It simply changed its form. The promise was no longer about facing down danger, but about savoring the peace. It was in the shared silence of the evening, the comfortable weight of Thor's head on Jake's foot, the slow, steady rhythm of their breathing in unison. These heroes, these K9 officers, dedicate their lives to protecting us. They run towards the sounds that make us hide. They face the dangers that we pray we never have to see. Their courage is immense, and their loyalty is absolute. It is our profound responsibility to value and care for them, not just when they wear the vest and ride in the patrol car, but long after. Their service leaves scars, both visible and invisible. Their bodies ache from years of strenuous work. They deserve a retirement filled with comfort, free from pain, surrounded by the love they so freely give. Jake looked down at his partner, his friend, his hero. The fading light caught the gray on Thor's muzzle, a silver badge of honor earned through a lifetime of service. He thought of all the other handlers out there, and the incredible animals who stood by their side. Each pair has a story of bravery, of a close call, of a moment of pure, unscripted connection that changed their lives forever. These stories matter. They are the fabric of a legacy of service that deserves to be shared. They remind us of the incredible capacity for love and loyalty that animals bring into our lives, and the lasting impact of a true partnership. Jake reached down and stroked Thor's broad head. "Ready for bed, old friend?" he asked softly. Thor lifted his head and looked at Jake. His amber eyes, still sharp and intelligent after all these years, were full of a deep, abiding affection. He gave a soft thump of his tail against the wooden planks of the porch. It was his answer. It was his promise. It was everything. For in the quiet loyalty of a hero at rest, you could find the truest meaning of a life well lived.